Spring love. It started with a glance beneath the cherry blossoms in a season that always made me feel like anything could happen, even things I didn't believe I deserved. I wasn't looking for him. Honestly, I wasn't looking for anyone. But he appeared anyway, with quiet eyes and a smile that felt like sunlight after too many cold months. I didn't know then that this would become the spring I'd never forget. He wasn't just another person on campus. He was someone who made me question everything I thought I knew about myself, about love, timing, and the kind of connection that doesn't ask for permission before it pulls you in. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. That way you won't miss any of our most emotional and transformative stories. Spring had just started settling into the city. That in-between time when the mornings were still cold enough for a jacket, but the afternoons smelled like possibility. Campus felt alive in a different way, students stretching out on the grass, couples holding iced coffees like tiny lifelines, the sky finally remembering what it meant to be blue. I liked sitting under the old tree near the east walkway, partly because it was quiet and partly because that's where I first noticed him. His name was Elliot. I didn't know that then. Back then, he was just the guy with the denim jacket, the one who walked like he had nowhere to be, but always ended up somewhere interesting. He had this effortless way of existing that made you want to follow him, just to see where he was going. I caught myself watching him more than once. Not staring. Not really. Just watching. I kept telling myself it was nothing. I'd done this before, built stories in my head around people I barely knew. It wasn't about romance, not exactly. It was about the idea that someone like that could walk into your life and shake it loose, make it brighter. But still, I was careful. I stayed in my lane. I had learned a long time ago that feelings like mine had to be folded quietly into the corners of things, kept safe and hidden. But then came that afternoon in early April. I was sitting with a book open on my lap. Not really reading, just pretending to, and I felt it before I saw it, that sensation of being watched. I glanced up, and there he was, standing just a few steps away, looking right at me. He smiled. Not a small, polite smile. A real one. A smile that stretched across his face like he was letting me in on a secret. It disarmed me so fast I forgot how to breathe. He raised a hand in a half wave and started walking toward me. "Hey," he said. His voice was deeper than I expected, easy and slow. "Hey," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral, casual, like my heart wasn't slamming against my ribs. He nodded at my book. "You actually reading that? Or just trying to look intellectual?" I laughed, a little louder than I meant to. "A bit of both, honestly." He sat down across from me without asking, like it was the most natural thing in the world. We talked for 20 minutes, maybe 30, about nothing and everything. Classes, music, the absurdity of trying to pick a major at 19. There was something about him that made everything feel less serious and more important at the same time. He asked questions like he actually cared about the answers. He listened like he wasn't just waiting for his turn to speak. When he finally stood up to leave, he said, "You coming here again tomorrow?" I nodded. "Probably." "Cool," he said, smiling again. "I'll bring coffee. You can pretend to read, and I'll pretend I'm not distracting you." Then he walked away, and I sat there stunned. The scent of spring thick in the air, and the memory of his smile burned into my mind. That night, lying in bed, I kept going over the conversation in my head, dissecting every word, every glance. I kept asking myself if I imagined the way he looked at me, or the way he leaned in just a little closer when I spoke. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he was just friendly. Or maybe, for the first time, something real was beginning. I didn't sleep much that night. The next day, I went back to the tree. I got there early. Too early. I told myself I was being ridiculous, getting worked up over a casual chat. But I waited anyway. And then he came, holding 2 coffees, handing one to me without saying anything, like this was already our thing. He sat down. I tried to keep my hands from shaking. He looked at me, not smiling this time, just watching. "I'm glad you came," he said. And just like that, I knew. This was more than nothing. But as he reached for his phone and glanced at the screen, something shifted in his face. He stood up. "I need to take this. Just a second." He walked off, phone pressed to his ear, voice low, face serious. And for the first time, I realized I didn't really know who he was at all. Who was Elliot really? He came back a few minutes later, phone in hand, expression unreadable. I tried not to study his face too much, but something in him had shifted. Gone was the easy, playful energy from earlier. Now he looked distant, distracted. "Everything okay?" I asked, careful with my tone. He tucked the phone away and nodded almost too quickly. "Yeah, just family stuff." I wanted to ask more, but something in his posture stopped me. So instead, I took a sip of the coffee he brought. Hazelnut, exactly how I liked it. I hadn't told him that. He must have guessed, or maybe paid attention the day I ordered it in line behind him. That small detail shouldn't have meant anything, but it did. It meant everything. We sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that felt heavy, like it was full of all the things we weren't saying. I caught myself watching him again, his hands wrapped around the paper cup, the way his thumb tapped rhythmically against the lid, like he was keeping time with something only he could hear. I wondered what he saw when he looked at me, if he noticed how nervous I got around him, if he felt the pull too, or if I was just imagining it all. At one point, our eyes met again, and this time I held his gaze, just for a second too long. His lips parted slightly, as if he was about to say something, but then he looked away. "I should probably go soon," he said quietly. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, of course. Got stuff to do." He didn't move right away. Instead, he looked back at me like he was wrestling with something. "Hey," he said. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." He hesitated. "Do you think it's weird if 2 guys hang out like this a lot? Just the 2 of them?" The question hit me like a punch. Not because of what he said, but because of the way he said it. Half hopeful, half afraid. Like he wanted me to answer for him, define it. "I don't think it's weird," I said carefully. "I think it's what it is. Depends on the people, right?" "Yeah," he said, exhaling. "Right." But the moment was already closing. He stood up and smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Same time tomorrow?" I nodded, trying not to let the confusion show on my face. "Sure." And then he was gone. That night, I couldn't stop replaying the question. Do you think it's weird if 2 guys hang out like this? Was he trying to test me? Was he curious? Nervous? I didn't know. But it made my chest tighten with something close to hope and fear. The next few days, we kept meeting under the same tree. Our conversations were lighter again. Jokes, music, movies we both hated. But there was always this undertone, like we were dancing around something that neither of us wanted to name. One afternoon, he asked me to come to an open mic night on campus. "My friend's playing. Thought it'd be fun. You could use a break from overthinking everything." "I don't overthink," I said. He gave me a look. "You definitely do." We went together, sat in the back of the room. The music was average, but I was hyper-aware of how close our knees were, how he kept leaning in to whisper comments in my ear. How at one point his hand brushed mine on the armrest, and neither of us moved. When the show ended, we walked back across campus under the pink dusk sky. Neither of us said much. I could feel a tension building in my chest, the kind that begged to be released. At the dorm entrance, he turned to me. "Thanks for coming. Thanks for inviting me." We stood there for a second, too close, too quiet. Then he reached out like he was going to say goodbye. But instead, his fingers brushed my arm, softly, slowly. Just a touch. But it sent a current through me I couldn't ignore. And then, out of nowhere, he pulled back and said, "I should tell you something." I blinked. "Okay." He looked down. "My ex is back in town, and he wants to talk." I froze. Ex? Before I could respond, he stepped inside the building, leaving me at the entrance with nothing but questions swirling through my chest. So he had been with a guy before. Then why did this feel so complicated? After that night, something shifted between us. Not in an obvious way. He still smiled when we saw, still brought coffee, still asked me how my week was going. But the air between us felt charged now, like every word carried weight. Every glance had a second meaning we were both too scared to name. I kept thinking about what he said. My ex is back in town, and he wants to talk. I didn't know what kind of history Elliot had with him, but the fact that he'd been with a guy before, that changed everything for me. Before, I had wrapped myself in excuses. Maybe he was just friendly. Maybe I was reading into it. But now? Now I couldn't tell if I was getting closer to the truth or just further tangled in it. We met again 3 days later in the art building courtyard. It was quieter than usual, warm with the early spring sun, and the campus smelled like grass and paint and coffee. Elliot was sitting on the edge of a planter box, sketching something in a small notebook when I arrived. He looked up, smiled, then closed the book before I could peek. "Don't judge me," he said. "It's terrible." I wasn't going to. "You always look like you're analyzing everything. Makes me nervous." I laughed. "Maybe I am." He stretched out his legs, arms behind him, soaking in the sunlight. God, I love this time of year. I nodded, watching the way the breeze played with the edges of his shirt. It feels like everything's possible again. He turned his head to look at me. "Do you believe that? That anything's possible?" I hesitated. "Sometimes. Depends who I'm with." His eyes stayed on mine a second longer than they needed to. Then he smiled again, softer this time. But before I could say anything else, a voice called from across the courtyard. "Elliot?" We both turned. A guy stood near the steps, broad shoulders, styled hair, confident stance. There was a tension in the way Elliot stood up, almost guilty, almost bracing. "Hey, Caleb," he said. Caleb, the ex. I stood too, unsure if I should stay or disappear. Caleb looked at me, then at Elliot. Didn't mean to interrupt. Elliot rubbed the back of his neck. "No, it's okay. I was just, this is my friend." I noticed the pause before he said friend. Not long, but just enough for it to echo in my mind. I gave Caleb a small nod. "Nice to meet you." He gave a half smile. "Yeah, you too." Elliot looked between us, then sighed. "I'll catch up with you later, okay?" I didn't know if he was talking to Caleb or me, maybe both. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, sure." As I walked away, my chest felt heavier than it had in days. The sun still shone, but it didn't feel warm anymore. That night I stayed up late, pacing in my room, trying to put words to what I was feeling. Jealousy? Maybe. But it was more than that. It was uncertainty, fear, the familiar ache of wanting someone and not knowing if they wanted you back. The next day, I didn't go to our usual spot. I skipped the bench, the coffee shop, even the library. I needed space to clear my head. I thought maybe he'd text, ask where I was, but he didn't. I was halfway through the second day of avoiding him when I found a note slipped inside my locker. I miss talking to you. Can we meet? Just that. No name, but I knew it was from him. That evening, I went to the sculpture garden behind the old theater building. It was where we used to sit during finals last semester, where he once told me he hated loud parties because he preferred quiet chaos. He was already there when I arrived. I didn't know if you'd come, he said, standing up. I shrugged. I wasn't sure either. He looked nervous, his hands deep in his pockets. Caleb came to talk. He's trying to fix things. And do you want that? I asked, heart pounding. He looked down. I don't know. Silence stretched between us. Then he stepped closer. But I know I feel something when I'm with you, something that makes me question everything else. My breath caught. Then what are we doing, Elliot? He took another step forward. I don't know yet, but I want to find out. And then, without thinking, he reached up and touched the side of my face, just for a second. His fingers were warm, gentle, and just like that, he stepped back again. I have to go, he said, but I meant it. Then he turned and walked into the night, leaving my skin tingling and my heart completely undone. The day after Elliot touched my face, it rained. Not the light, romantic kind of spring rain either, but the kind that made people cancel plans, made the air heavy and the sidewalks slick with muddy water. I didn't expect to see him. Honestly, I didn't know what to expect anymore. But just past noon, as I was leaving the dining hall, trying to shield my head with my arm, I saw him across the quad. Soaked, no umbrella, hair stuck to his forehead, jacket clinging to his shoulders. And still, he looked like he belonged in the rain, like it followed him on purpose. I didn't think. I just ran to him. What are you doing? I asked, half laughing, half scolding. You'll get sick out here. He blinked water from his eyes and grinned. I was hoping I'd run into you. Mission accomplished, I said, pulling him under the awning of the chemistry building. We stood there, catching our breath. People rushed by behind us, jackets over their heads, trying not to be late. But we stayed still, like the rain had paused everything for us. He finally spoke. Do you want to get out of here? I hesitated. Where? Anywhere that's not campus. I could have said no. I could have reminded him we barely knew what we were doing, but I didn't. Yeah, I said. Okay. We took the bus downtown, sat in the very back, side by side, not touching but close enough that I felt the heat from his leg against mine. Neither of us said much. The silence was full, but not awkward, like something was happening, slowly, underneath everything. He took me to a second-hand bookstore he used to visit with his aunt. The place smelled like pages and dust and time. He walked straight to the poetry section, pulled down a thin, bent copy of something I'd never heard of, and handed it to me. This is the one, he said. I flipped it open, reading a random line aloud. We are not meant to belong to each other. We are meant to collide. He watched me carefully. That's the line I thought about. The first day we met. I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to ask him what that meant, really meant, but I was afraid of the answer. Afraid he'd still say, I don't know. Afraid he'd mean it. We ended up walking more after that. It rained off and on, our jackets damp and our shoes soaked, but we didn't care. We talked about everything and nothing. He told me about his childhood, how he moved around a lot, how sometimes he hated the idea of staying in one place too long. I told him how I always did the opposite, clinging too tightly to places, to people, to moments. I wish I could be like you, I said. He shook his head. No, I wish I could stay the way you do. Maybe that's why I keep coming back. That hit me harder than I expected. The sun started to set, and we stopped at a diner for something hot. We shared fries and laughed over bad coffee. The moment felt too good, too easy. But then he got quiet. What is it? I asked. He hesitated. Caleb texted again. Of course. And? He said he wants to meet. One last time. For closure. I looked down at my cup. Are you going? He nodded. Tomorrow. I didn't say anything. What could I say? I wasn't his boyfriend. I wasn't even sure what I was to him. But my heart felt like it had been dunked in ice water. Hey, he said, leaning in, voice low. Today meant something to me. I need you to know that. I believe you, I whispered, even if I didn't know if I should. He walked me home. We stood under the flickering porch light of my building, both of us drenched and tired, but unwilling to go inside yet. He reached out, brushing my wet hair from my forehead, the gentlest touch imaginable. Then he stepped back. I'll text you tomorrow, he said. And then he was gone again, leaving me in the doorway, heart racing, wondering, is he saying goodbye or just scared to say hello? I waited the entire next day for a message that never came. By nightfall, I gave up pretending to study. I just sat in my room, staring at the phone like it might explain everything. At 11:42 p.m., it buzzed, a single message. I kissed him. I thought I needed closure, but now I just feel empty. I didn't know what to say. My chest tightened as if I'd known this was coming, but still hoped I was wrong. I typed and erased a dozen replies. Finally, I sent just one. Then maybe it wasn't closure. Maybe it was goodbye. No answer came. I turned off the lights and laid down. The glow of spring outside my window suddenly colder than it had been all season. A week passed. We didn't talk. I saw him once across campus. He looked tired, lost, like I felt. I started avoiding the old tree, the coffee shop, even the bookstore. It was easier to pretend we were strangers again. But then, one afternoon, as I packed my things after class, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned. It was him. No smile this time. I was wrong, he said. About everything. I didn't move. I just let him speak. I kept thinking I could fix the past, but I should have been looking at what was right in front of me. I waited, quiet. I'm not asking for anything, he continued. I just needed you to know. It was never just friendship. Not with you. I nodded. I know. He reached for my hand, just for a moment. A soft press. Then he walked away, letting me hold that truth in my chest like a secret no one else could ever touch. Some love stories don't need a label. Some moments never become relationships, but they still change you. Elliot made me question the way I saw myself, the way I opened my heart. And even though I don't know if we'll find our way back to each other, I know I'll never see spring the same way again. Have you ever met someone who left a mark even without staying? If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and turn on notifications. And tell us in the comments, would you have waited or walked away? Let's keep telling stories that feel like truth.